information. The commissioner is too far out, so we're going to begin. If everyone's ready, welcome to this special meeting.
I think you will explain that our agenda has diminished, correct?
Yes. So
Okay,
we're.
they were asking me about it.
Oh,
Sit tight, yeah.
There's two neighbors here on the.
got it. We are called to order. And I'll note that the item for Nevada Street has been pulled from the agenda. So if you are here to comment on that, we won't be hearing that until more information is brought, and it'll be re-agendized.
And will we receive an updated notice as neighbors? We share a property line with Bronskis.
What-
Yes, the notice is going out today
All right.
in the mail.
And just a note, you can subscribe to notices on the city website for all public meetings. So you'll get an email when any public meeting is scheduled, including the ones of your interest, but also city council, the committees. It's a good thing to do, so you don't have to look for what's going on. It just comes to you. So just to be doubly sure, go to the city website and subscribe to e-notifications. Yeah,
Okay, we'll do that. Thanks for coming.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, there's one more.
So, gosh, where do I start this now? All items on the agenda will be open for public comments before final action is taken. Citizens wishing to introduce written material into the record. That's a whole bunch of stuff. Speakers must restrict comments to the item as it appears on the agenda and stay within a 3-minute time limit, or lesser time if chair determines the number of people who wish to speak add up to too much time. This planning commission meeting convenes on the ancestral territories of the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll lead us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please.
Commissioner Van Zandt,
Present.
Vice Chair Cobden,
Present.
Chair Nye.
Present.
Okay.
Any member of the public at this time may address any item not on the agenda that's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the planning commission or staff to discuss issues brought forth under public comment. The planning commission cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on a future agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda item at the time that it is heard. Speakers must restrict comments to the item as it appears on the agenda and stay within the 3-minute time limit. So 506 Nevada Street has been pulled. So our first item of business is item 2, Commercial Street Softscape Planters. And Lisa, if you would introduce it for us.
Of course. So thank you, commissioners, for being here today for the special meeting. I know that we've visited this item a few times, so I appreciate your presence here to talk it out some more. At the excuse me, let me just remind myself of the date, the March 13th City Council meeting, I presented the Commercial Street Softscape project to the City Council. I do have a regret on that, and I wanted to just bring that forward right out the gate and say that the staff recommendations were different than the Planning Commission's recommendations, and I wished two things. First of all, that I had brought the planter discussion back to the commission for discussion before taking it to the council, knowing that at our meeting when we discussed the planters, the conversation about the topic was focused on other things and relatively short, and that the motions were rushed at the end and kind of clobbered together. And so I do wish that I had brought it back to the commission before making a recommendation to council. But at council's request, because of my interpretation of how that meeting went, they asked me to bring it back to you again to ensure that the motions that are made regarding the planters are clear. I also wanted to bring to light that the way that the motions were made previously was basically stating the commission's desire to not have city-provided planters, and that the preference was to go in a path of more creating a program for sidewalk encroachment for merchants and store owners and restaurant owners. So I just wanted to go over the motions again today and truly reconsider if the commission has any recommendations for planters, city-provided planters on Commercial Street. I'd like to discuss the context of that, even if we aren't looking at an actual design, as my design is not provided in the packet, and think about if the commission is open to planters on Commercial Street and was willing to make a recommendation, what sorts of things would you recommend? What sort of things would you not want to see? Exclusions, anything that you definitely would be opposed to, similarly to the conversation that was had about, no plastic or fake materials before. So with that, I'll open up the discussion for commissioners.
Well, first we'll have questions from us to you, if there are any, and then we'll go to public comment from there, and then discussion. That's our usual format. So anything in the form of a question, either Peter or Amy.
No, I think I know all of the things I need to know about planters to make a decision.
Same.
Okay, so, welcoming public comment.
Lori Oberholzer, 310 Nevada Street. I attended the city council meeting, and I was a little surprised at that the staff report didn't speak to the tenor and the theme of what I thought the commission said related to planters and flower boxes at your whatever meeting it was, January meeting. So I'm glad to hear your explanation, and I'm glad it's back here so you can. I think what happened was it was really rushed at the end, and you needed to put together a motion, but you had to get out of the room. And so all of those specifics that really for one little subject you had actually talked quite a long time on, and very eloquently about that your very clear desire for merchant planters that were individual and traditional and in keeping with the street as opposed to the boxes. I thought it was really clear, and you were really enthusiastic about it. But there just was not time to put those points into the motion, other than the fact that it got reiterated that you would like some guidelines for that, and it would require some work on sidewalk encroachment issues. And that did make it into the motion, but it didn't point back to this desire for these wonderful little flower pots. So I hope you'll hold firm on, what you agreed to at your last meeting, because I think it'll really be beautiful. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Mann, owner of J.J. Jackson's on Commercial Street. And I am very hopeful that you come up with a great vision today, because I am very hopeful that this might be finished. In May of 2020, or over 4 years ago, this corner of Friar Tuck's was dug up. And that was a few months into the pandemic. Our shop was already closed, but we had been hopeful that, this had been in the planning for a while, but it took months for it to start after the pandemic began. And then I have more pictures showing us, one of my staff members standing outside of our shop in May of 2022 with fresh sidewalks and yet unpaved street. It was a very long process. Obviously, good things take a long time. But I'm ready for it to be finished. And it had been our understanding, granted, we weren't well communicated with. The vision wasn't well conveyed. We saw beautiful pictures by Rebecca Kaufman of a tree-lined street, but that wasn't going to come about. I understand that now. But we did hear from Brian McAllister that they'd laid water lines down under the sidewalk that was meant for future plantings. And at that stage, we didn't know if it would be a tree hole, tree well, whatever that's called, where they cut out a section of concrete and plant a tree. No vision was conveyed. And that's the biggest oversight I see in this whole project. And it's why I think it's dragged on for so long, that there's no real clear plan. So at this stage, I am very hopeful for some kind of planting. I would like them actually large enough to hold a small tree. That would be my vision. And I think they would look great grounded next to the benches. I think that the vision of widening our streets, it's my understanding that was to make it a more pleasant place to hang out, more amenable for people to enjoy with the street closure on the weekends. So I see plants as adding life, vibrancy, and all the good stuff that might come with setting out a bouquet of flowers when friends are coming over. So I hope that you do some city planting, because I think the onus on the merchants, I haven't seen them come about and do that, and I fear it wouldn't come about. And I think the street is longing for some life. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. So we don't have any online commenting.
We do have letters that were written.
Though we don't tend to read those into the record on the meeting, at the meeting. I've lost my spot here.
Whoops.
Would anyone like to jump in on discussion here?
Okay.
Don't use the word boxes.
Not even planter boxes?
Planter boxes.
Just for the sake of clarity. I'm kind of kidding, but say what you want.
In response to the idea that we rushed through at the end of our last meeting, that is true, but the issues have been before us 2 or 3 times. It was not the last time that we had looked at this, the sidewalkscape and planters. So,
Can we pause for a second?
We can.
And ask Wendy Ermshar if she's here?
I wouldn't want
Add her to
Wendy
roll
to
call.
miss my comment.
You prepared to jump in?
Yeah.
Wendy Ermshar, are you here?
I'm here.
Got it.
Let
I
the
have her
record
on here.
show.
And I'll just give us a slight intro to Wendy. We've had public comment from Lori and Teresa, and Lisa introduced the item and the purpose for us meeting on this again at this stage. I'm afraid we shouldn't totally spend a lot of time telling you what was said. But, so having had public comment, we are doing discussion on the agenda item. And Peter was talking.
Yes, I was. And like I say, I don't think the issues of specific planter boxes went unconsidered. I think we all knew what it was. We've been at this for meeting after meeting after meeting. So the vote we took on planter boxes was no large boxes. And then we talked in vague terms about having greenery in pots at the store level in front of the stores. We never completed that one. We really didn't in terms of a motion as far as I remember. But we voted against planters, and that's still my vote today. And I agree with the letter from Stewart on the large boxes. He calls them, and will be detrimental to the overall aesthetic of the street. And he called them Disneyland-esque uniform planters. He's a writer, isn't he? So anyway, I'm sticking with that. No planter boxes. And the next step, I think, coming back to us, it's not on the agenda today, is what would we do about the pots by the doors, like J.J. Jackson's? Is there an option for flower boxes on the walls? I had a walkthrough a couple days ago, and it seems like there are maybe 3 stores with flat fronts on the north side and 2 or 3 on the south side that could have planter boxes if they wanted, and then we'd have to decide who's going to take care of them. There's a planter box up by Sopatai that's got it's just got dead plants in it, so that's not very helpful. But anyway, so no on planter boxes, yes on relooking at other greenery elements that we can allow. And I like the idea. Tom, you were at some discussion of the whole idea that going green is good for the look. And we also liked the picture, if you remember, that we had from Savannah. And those were flower boxes either sitting on the sidewalk or in boxes. So I think we need to explore that. And I don't know if I don't think it's on the agenda today.
What if those flower boxes were city-provided boxes?
Which ones?
The ones that you're referencing. You said there was like 3 spots on the north side and 2 on the south side.
These are ones that would be affixed to the storefront.
To the building?
Yeah. Well, that was my first concept. Yes. Yeah. Boxes sitting on the sidewalk that are only this, we haven't discussed that yet. I think that's open for discussion if we want to do it. But
We'll probably go around a couple of times,
yeah, okay. I went first.
Amy or Wendy?
I hear you, Teresa, that the concern perhaps is that if we give stores the option, they won't necessarily take it. My idea had been before to provide a carrot of sorts or make it easier by using the money we would have spent on the larger planters to reimburse shops if they choose to go that route. My concern with the smaller planters is that you're dealing with annuals that take up a lot of water and can die quite easily. I think it's a thing to consider, but ultimately it's not necessarily our decision to make. It's just something that we might want to think about in the broader scheme of things, that if the whole idea is beautification of the street, we want it to be sustainable and thoughtful. I wonder if within the notion that we could use the money that would be otherwise going towards establishing permanent planters, if we could offer someone like Teresa the option for a very large planter where a Japanese maple or other kind of tree could be put in, then my concern is it really okay for us to assume that store owners who are already having quite a hard time right now economically should also be paying for extra water for these things? Lisa, could you illuminate for me where our purview ends with respect to things with these issues?
I mean, for today, I think it would be great to discuss the city-provided planters and
So city-provided planters, as in we have this money, we want to finish the project and get city planters, we're just deciding what they look like?
yeah, and there is an opportunity for if we wanted to do a program, but that's going to come with its own timeline.
Okay.
So it could be a possibility. And obviously, we wouldn't really need to do both,
Okay.
If we say we want to have city-provided planters, then we probably wouldn't need to do the program at this time, right? Because then we'd have planters, and then people would want to put more planters out. So we'd sort of be doubling up. Would you see it that way?
Yeah, I see what you mean, which is why I'm also wondering if, in light of what Stuart is offering in the email that he sent, shifting all the control and decision-making of aesthetic to individual store owners and then providing reimbursement with the funds that would be used otherwise is a more store-friendly option.
Than what? Sorry, just so I make sure.
Then the city purchasing
Yeah.
planters that we agree on today and then giving them out. So to sum up, I would like to put the choice in the hands of the shop owners. If someone like Teresa would like to have a large planter that she can put a manageable tree into, I say, great, I would love to see that. I think that there are just too many cooks in the kitchen right now, and it's really about the shop owners for me. On to you.
Okay. Thank you, by the way, for trying to wait for me. Unfortunately, I missed the setup, and as well, I have been out sick a lot, so I was not at the city council meeting. And so I'm left with some lingering kind of confusion and in terms of how we're back here, because I felt like things were really clear what we were advocating for at our meeting, and I'm not sure how that was not clear in turn to the city council. Our recommendation was unanimous outside of Rod in terms of wanting to not have uniform Disneyland-esque planters and rather keep the whimsy and the artistry and the uniqueness of something that was more spontaneously generated by a merchant who is essentially embellishing the front of an individual building rather than trying to create this cohesive, uniform streetscape. So I guess when I consider what I need to share right now. I think it's just to reiterate what I said at the last meeting, which is that I'm not in favor of large uniform planters. I'm totally pro-plant. I think that does create, beauty and, as an example with Teresa's planters, there's others on Broad Street at Bistro 221. There are some window boxes in places, and when they're properly cared for, it's darling. You can go to a lot of urban areas, even in major metro cities, like I think of Minneapolis where I've lived, and year-round they have some sort of, pots, and everybody does their thing with them. They use birch branches in the winter because everything dies, and there's different things that can be done. So I think I'm just reiterating that. I'm not sure what else is being asked today because I missed the setup. So is the next question just whether I think the city should buy the pots or not? Is that the next question?
Yeah, it's mostly just to reevaluate the potential for city-provided pots or planters, not in the design that was presented, but in any shape or form, and whether or not we should, think about it in its entirety, and even if it looks completely different than what you guys have seen before. Because at the city council meeting, I presented the same design, and so I was requested to bring it back, and the questions that came forward at the meeting, and the way that I explained it, I said I felt like the conversation was, looking at this thing, and this thing, but not really the planters part of the design. And so I felt like it was partly because we spent time on lots of other things and talking about the potential for the, merchant program, and trees and benches, and then sort of realized that we were running out of time. And I just kind of, looked at the notes I had been taking and, spouted off the motions. And so the reason it's coming back to you is to just reevaluate those motions, make sure that that you don't want to add or change anything, and understand that, if you don't make a recommendation for city planters, that that's okay, but the council might still want to provide some planters.
Yeah. So, and I, something that I did not reiterate today was that I felt like there was general support for figuring out, although it was not determined, whether there was a way for the vessels to be paid for, reimbursed, things like that. So that feels like kind of a separate, that seems like a separate item from what we're trying to talk about today, I guess, unless you,
I mean, I think it's separate, but it's related, so, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd be in favor of evaluating whether that makes any sense. I have no idea what the budget was. I don't know how far that would go. And I also don't feel like the street is broken. I feel like there is this sense of, and there's a voice in places, or maybe just an effort in places that is seeming to really want to force a certain way of doing this. And that's never the best way to make a decision, is just to check it off the list and do it. I think we've done more than due diligence to evaluate the feasibility based on fit, aesthetic, our values as a historic neighborhood, and differentiating what the experience is in historic Nevada City versus Main Street USA, or even our fun neighbors in Grass Valley that have their own new identity. And I feel like we've done our due diligence on that. And so, and I feel like it's been relatively unanimous. Even, the merchants want something. I don't know that I'm really even hearing merchants say, yeah, let's put big things down the middle of the street. So, I think maybe two places, as I'm just meandering here, two places where I might adjust the semantics. I'm in support of basically what my colleagues are saying here. One thing I would say, though, is my primary concern is not the merchants. It is all of the citizens and visitors of Nevada City. And I am also a merchant, and I want the whole town to look great. Like when Commercial Street looks great, it's good for me. And I also don't believe that we are restricting merchants with this idea from expressing and embellishing and creating, some beautiful natural elements, to the street. And I would like to see that honestly adopted throughout the entire city, not just Commercial Street. That would be, I think it'd be lovely. The other thing that I would say, just slightly different from Peter, is just that I didn't think anything was vague last time. I thought it was really clear. And so if there's a way that I can be more clear, I'm definitely willing to do that. Just ask me a question. So, thank you.
Well, I'd like to start with saying in triplicate and quadruplicate that we weren't, the Planning Commission was unified in not preferring a unified look, which would have been the case with copy after copy of platters within a certain aesthetic. And we were strongly unified in preferring a more individualized, organic, eclectic look. And we did run out of time in describing a path forward for accomplishing that. So our decision regarding city-provided planters had to do with city-provided planters that looked the same as presented. Another thing that Teresa brought up and seems clear to me, and other people have said this as well, a couple of council members also, that we could provide a path forward for merchant-provided greenery, and yet we can't make them do it, so it may not happen. And if the city council and a good number of citizens want greenery on Commercial Street, and it does look a little bare, it could certainly use some life. Maybe there's a hybrid way to maximize the eclectic look of the architecture in the various businesses on Commercial Street. Another sort of difficulty with the merchant approach is that it could create an enforcement problem for the city. We're not staffed a lot for the plant police to say, that's looking a little brown and ugly. Whereas if it were under the control of the city or Public Works, then it's managed by the city and it always looks good if it's a good design and the stuff that is city provided is well considered and aesthetically pleasing. So another possibility, and at the end of that discussion regarding planters, a thing that made it seem, when the commission discussed it before, it seemed to me that we were out of our depth doing essentially landscape design. We didn't have enough information. We're not specialists. It gets a little, we're out of our depth doing that. And it seemed to me, and I've had a preliminary conversation with with Lisa and a landscape architect about perhaps laying out a scope and some guidelines for a landscape architect to create an eclectic, architecturally sensitive, moderate approach to greening up Commercial Street, so that we're not in the business of landscape design. So I mentioned that to the commission. Maybe that could be an attractive way to both accomplish the goal without waiting for merchants to opt in. It seems to me that for the merchant-centric approach to take off is for the merchants of Commercial Street to actually get together and form a program and commit to enacting it. And that seems to be something that we either should count on if it exists or count out if it doesn't. If our goal is to do this, pretty up the street, green it up a bit, bring some life, and I think the council has asked for that to happen by whatever means we guide it toward with. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it at this point. So I think our goal ought to be to decide which approach, or a hybrid of those approaches, or to decide not to participate, not to recommend greenery to the city council.
I think we can, I'm just writing down some notes here. We've talked about tree planters, we talked about merchant plants or planters and pots, and we talked about flower boxes. Those are the things we've talked about. I think there were some other ones. Okay. We've taken a firm decision on the planter boxes. So I think we already voted. I think we've voted twice on them. So we voted against them. So that's taken care of from our standpoint.
I don't believe there was any motion made in regards to planter boxes.
That's not my memory. Does anybody else have a
The motions
memory?
were allow the planning commission and staff to work on guidelines for sidewalk encroachment for planters and consider creating a program where we consider other locations throughout the downtown business.
It's not my memory.
I think
That's not my memory.
certainly it's in the video record.
Well, what is your recollection?
I know that we talked a lot about it, like there was endless conversation about it, but when it came down to it, I honestly do not remember what the specific motion was so much as we didn't say we vote no on planters. It was more,
Well, so that was the intention, because the conversation had all been, in fact, I remember you saying, I agree with Wendy.
I know, and that is in the record,
That
yeah.
we don't want these uniform planters that had been used as an example, different versions, iterations.
But I think that the discrepancy here is that while it was extensively discussed, it wasn't articulated very clearly in the motion.
Correct.
So maybe that's what we could do right now is figure out how best to clarify what was not before and just send it back? Since we all agree anyway, right?
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about it that much more, do we?
Well, I think actually the hanging question is how to accomplish it if essentially all we're saying is that we said city-owned planters because we perceive city-owned planters as a unified theme up and down both sides of the street.
Right, what was before you, what I showed, that's what was being thought about and considered.
So that's what we voted no on essentially, and saw as attractive a more eclectic, organic approach to planting, but we didn't lay out how to do that.
May I
Okay, can
jump
I?
in?
Please.
I have a hopeful thought. Lisa, from your perspective, are we talking about like, so there's my idea of reimbursing shop owners. And then what you had brought up earlier is that if the city buys everything, it could be the same, absolutely the same, that the city could own the same pot that the shop owner might buy themselves, but the shop owner would just have to come to the city, I don't know, like facilities, warehouse, or whatever, and pick it up there. Is that kind of what you were getting at? Like maybe the city could purchase an eclectic variation of different pots and planters, and shop owners can come and decide which ones work for them?
I've thought about it, but I am not the one to make that decision, so I've just kind of vaguely thought about it,
Could
and I
that
don't.
be for
I
us to
don't-
recommend to council? Is that something that we would?
You know, so when I start thinking about the logistics of that, it feels ultimately simpler because we don't know how many people will participate. And then, you know, we can't expect somebody who's, you know, your specialty is being a city planner, not necessarily a landscape designer, you know, to be trying to design this per se. I think that's where Tom's coming in at, that in terms of the way to pay for, you know, planters, it feels like a reimbursement or a budget makes more sense to me, where there becomes just some guidelines about some of the things we said initially about when we were trying to consider the uniform planters, right? There was some guidelines. We said no plastic, nothing that's like a, you know, a composite material that's showing. It should be made out of natural materials. It feels like there should be some guidelines on maybe dimensions, materials, and, you know, like we wouldn't want to see, I don't know, like big plastic, you know, pots or something, right? And then the merchant has room within that to decide, well, how big do I want it to be? How much do I really want to plant? What fits in my space?
Yeah.
And maybe they just have a budget or something.
That's my favorite idea, honestly, is just dividing it up between the different shops on the street and saying each of you get X amount, buy what you want, and we'll give you the reimbursement. I don't know if that works well for you, like what kind of headache that's creating, but it does seem like if we want to support stores and making those choices within a set of guidelines.
And
that's what
individuality, where it's like, this
I
one
would also like to
resonates
see
with
that.
me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just remind us all that they just may not do it,
Right.
and we can't make them. And
But if
like
we-
to Teresa, J.J. Jackson's is the only store that has a plant in front of it.
What about this then? If a store's not gonna do it, another store can say, hey, can I take your credit? And then they can have
Okay.
twice as many plants.
Here's my question, what's it gonna look like? So if you
It's
were
gonna look great.
If you were gonna go to BNC
That's a
and you owned
statement of faith.
Kaya's Naturals and you wanted to do the planter and you walked around BNC, what planter would you pick out?
Ooh, I would pick out one of
I would
the
not go to
cut-
BNC
I would cut
to
one of
start.
the wine barrels.
Yeah, I wouldn't go to BNC.
I would, BNC has some great options. They've got plenty of options. They've got different terracotta, they've got glaze, they've got wine barrels. And then, of course, there are plenty of other shops in the outlying area that have excellent options as well, I think.
So that's why I ask, is because like if we're gonna come up with 4 or 5 planters that we offer as acceptable, then
I think it's more like
What are
materials that we want to make sure that are not used. Peter, I'm
Okay.
sorry, you've been waiting.
This is reminding me of the conversation we had the last time. And we started off with planters, and we know what they look like. You dragged them all in, and you had pictures.
I think that was two
Slides,
times
yeah.
ago.
Yeah, slides. So we know what planters look like. And I've got 2 notes here that, in quotes, "no city-owned planters." That came out of the motion that included something about light poles and benches, and we still talked about storefront plants and window boxes. But out of that, we voted no on the planter boxes. So unless I'm wrong, we should take the vote again, but I think I am correct on that.
Well, it
So-
wasn't captured as a motion at the end, so it may have been discussed, but it wasn't one of the motions that was first and seconded.
And we're not really talking about city-owned planters in
And as
that
far
way
as the minutes
right
go.
now, I think. Right? Unless,
Would-
Well,
My-
what
my
was,
underst-
okay, I'm very frustrated about this. What was presented to us, the most concrete thing that we were presented with was planter boxes. They were there, they were lined up there, they were in slides, we looked at out on the street, and we said no. Now, if you're unclear about it, why don't we take, I will make a motion that we, let's see, how do I want to say this? I'm going to make a motion that we recommend that we not use city-supplied planters on the commercial street, on Commercial Street. Is that clear enough, or somebody want to clean up the English?
I'm wondering, though, if you guys aren't, if you're being misunderstood.
yeah, I sort of suspect as well. I think that my interpretation at the end of our last discussion was that many of us were pro plants on the street.
Absolutely.
We weren't necessarily saying that the city should be providing the planters. However, we do have money in a budget to supply planters. So my proposal is that we come up with guidelines, which I thought we already did, saying no plastic, no composite, XYZ, and other than that, shop owners can get credits to buy whatever they want and get reimbursed with the money that we have.
Okay.
Can I try
Now-
to help just a
Yeah,
little bit
please.
more? I think one of the challenges is we have a word called planter that was used to describe those that you're referencing. And in this case, I think you're also accurately using the word planter to describe.
Very broadly.
Could be a little urn, it could be a window box, things are planted in that are not the ones that were mocked up.
Tom and I had this discussion
Okay.
a long time ago, and I think, okay, planter boxes are an item that we were shown. We know what they look like, we've seen pictures of them, we've seen them
Yeah.
actually on there, we've seen them in here. So planter boxes is one thing very well defined.
Those planter boxes that we saw.
Planter boxes, yes.
Those planter boxes
Those-
that
And
we
that's-
saw,
and- Yes.
can we agree that those planter boxes that we saw are the ones that we don't prefer?
All of us agree that.
Now, did we vote against them?
Yes.
You all remember we voted
I
against them?
thought we all voted against
Yes, we
them.
did.
Okay.
And because we understood, I'd like to
No,
jump in.
no,
We
I-
understood those to be city-owned planters. And as a majority, we voted against city-owned planters, presumably in the form of the
Okay.
things that we saw.
So we are correcting.
Right?
Yes, I agree, that's where I started.
So there's no need to correct that, there's no need to correct that
Yeah.
motion.
There is a need to correct it in Lisa's
Record.
record, because she just said.
City-owned
her
planters,
record
period.
said- Her record, she just said her record shows that we weren't clear about it or something, whatever your language was.
Yeah, I don't have a motion for no city-owned planters. I just have the planning commission and staff work together on guidelines for sidewalk encroachment for planters and consider creating a program where we consider other locations throughout the downtown business district.
So I will make the motion that, that we do not approve of city-owned planter boxes on Commercial Street.
Okay, the only part where I'm not able to reconcile that phrasing is, are you saying then that a city-owned planter would or would not be something that a merchant buys and gets reimbursed for?
Okay, let me go
Is that
over this again, because I'm getting very frustrated. A planter box, I just tried to define as the
I'm
planter
hung up
box-
on city-owned now. City-owned. City-owned, because there's
I
a
will-
conversation
I-
happening.
I will-
Let me just interrupt. the
I will
proceedings.
add
There's-
to-
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Well,
I can't
there's
second
question-
something I don't understand.
Okay. The motion is that we do not approve of city-owned planter boxes on Commercial Street. Is that clear?
I'm sorry, what's a planter box?
Exactly.
I've referred to it 3 or 4 times.
Okay,
The
do you mean the
boxes that were
proposed planter
presented.
boxes?
The previously.
Sorry.
We have been talking about planter boxes for 3 or 4 months now, and we have gotten examples of them. So the planter box phrase that I used, and I will say it again, and it'll be in the record, that it refers to the boxes that were showed to us by planning, both in here, in slides, and on the street. Those boxes, the tree.
So the
big-
proposed planter boxes.
Okay.
That helps me, because if you just say any city-owned planter box, then I'm hearing you say that we're eliminating this other discussion that's happening.
No.
Does that
No,
make sense?
No, no.
That's not your intention, I understand now, I think.
Okay, I'm trying to break up our discussions that we have had over and over and over again. We start talking about trees, and the trees, and then we talk about planter boxes with trees in them, and then we talk about planter boxes that are provided by the city. Yes, and then we talk about all of the other options that we want to include, merchant-owned things and that sort of stuff. So
Okay.
So I'm just trying to
my
diff-
hesitation is not whether you're right or wrong, it's that it's recorded in a way that there isn't confusion again, because I thought we were clear last time, and I don't want there to be some semantical kind of, problem
I am,
that
as
then
the
it's-
maker of the motion, I am open to correction of the
Yeah.
language that I made. But I agree with you. I thought we voted against
Right.
city-owned planter boxes of the type that were presented to us and shown to us.
Gotcha. So,
So would anybody second that? Well, we did it the last time. We
right.
thought-
So the motion is that you are moving that we
Not
not approve
approve,
the proposed city-owned planter boxes.
yes.
As
I-
proposed in January?
There's only one type proposed, right? The type and location, really.
Should we add to that, as presented to the planning commission? Boxes as presented to the planning
As
commission?
previously presented.
Previously.
To the Planning Commission.
You got all that yet?
I got it.
Sure, second, go ahead.
Yeah.
Cole?
Roll call.
Commissioner Ermschar,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Zant,
Oh, sure.
Vice Chair Cobden,
No.
and Chair Knight.
No.
Point of order, will there be a second motion
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to go.
Right.
Thanks.
And yet.
I have to ask a question, though. Did you guys vote no because you think we voted yes the last time? Or are you voting no to leave Lisa open to present planting boxes?
I think the latter. I'm trying to keep it open so that we can find something that's flexible
I-
for.
Can I help you there a little bit?
Is it help?
I'm hopeful that the planter boxes are real things that we have seen.
I don't want the things that we've seen. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't want those.
That's what I was trying to
That's
say.
what he's trying to make the motion
Okay.
for.
And then there's these other options that we have that we're unclear about and we're still discussing. And I fully support those. I just don't know how to phrase them at this point. But Lisa said she's not sure about our stand on planter boxes.
Yeah.
The ones we know that have been presented. And so I made a motion, and now it didn't fly. So where does that leave boxes? She doesn't know what we did, but she has no record. we think we have a record, and we just voted down. So as far as the record goes, planter boxes are still on the table for consideration.
I'm having a semantical issue with the inclusion of the word box, because in discussion, there's a lot of talk about planter boxes versus planter boxes. And, no, I'm sorry, but if, I don't want to be bound to prohibit window boxes, say. So, and I guess your motion was fairly clear.
Something about it still
We
made us
have not, we have
Peter,
not been.
instead of arguing about that, why don't we try and figure out something constructive where we can all agree that we want to see? Instead of saying we definitely don't want to see the one thing that we know we don't want to see, we can write something that excludes those boxes into something that,
We were presented planter boxes, and if, and we've defined them 3 times, 4 times, 5 times here already. The boxes that were presented in slides and in models to us as planter boxes for,
Right, so some are metal. Some of the proposed ones were metal, so they weren't, those were.
would you
in
call
our-
that a planter box?
yes. But I'm wondering, I would like to get out of this quicksand of the planter box. It seems like we're being fixated on that instead of
I
going forward.
agree with the vice chair that we should focus on a path forward and then define how to proceed on that path.
Yes.
None of us want to see those planter boxes. You're safe there, but I just want to move forward.
And I agree.
And we're,
So let's
and we
stop
have the
arguing
option
about it.
to, we have the option to make that clear, I think, later on. I just, again,
I just need to say, the planter boxes that we've been shown are the only, those are that's a very concrete item. And we don't know what the other items are going to be. So, but I thought we eliminated those planter boxes as presented. And now we're trying to work out.
I think my objection to those is that I didn't like the uniformity of them up and down the street, but what I do like is the option for any store to choose, to have a variety of choices. Maybe they want to choose something that looks like that, but isn't quite that. Maybe one of those boxes would look okay in the context of a variety of different options, I don't know. But I just want to set up a situation where store owners can make decisions within a set of guidelines and be reimbursed, much in the way that they can make decisions about paint, about the front of their stores, about signs and dressings, like,
I agree.
yeah.
But when we get, okay, that's what I call the B part of the commercial street planting plans. And if we do that, and I think we all agreed that was a good thing, let the merchants do it, but we're going to have some guidelines also,
Yeah.
because we don't want plastic boxes with blinking lights.
That's come up multiple times already. Let's get it hammered out then.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
so I have little confidence that merchants will participate. There's no way we can tell them to. There's nothing to compel them to. And I suppose if it's all right with us that nothing gets done, then I guess that's fine. It depends on our goal. If we want something to happen, I think it should like look good as a full composition, not uniform, a designed eclecticism. Especially, and also including some expertise regarding what kind of plants look good in what location and is correctly placed due to light conditions and mindful of seasonal weather. Hence the idea of a designer who can design an eclectic, locationally sensitive aesthetic. and then it's done. There's a path forward and it gets accomplished.
Is it true, Lisa, what Teresa said threw me off, that Brian said that there was water lines under the sidewalks to accommodate trees? Is that a
I was just talking to him
miscommunication?
about it this morning. He said there's a empty conduit under there. So I don't know how big it is, if it would be big enough to put a water line through there
Huh.
or what. But
Is
there,
that-
it's along the curb, he said. So,
I remember that discussion.
yeah.
And I remember a concern about tree wells causing a drainage into the very tangled infrastructure under the sidewalks and under the street, causing a problem.
My understanding
with all
was
that stuff.
infrastructural issues beneath the sidewalk as
Yeah.
well.
And then the street.
Unfortunately, it's a real bummer, because that would be great.
I am really struggling to understand how dire this situation is for planters. We have not had plants on that street forever, and we have won awards in Sunset Magazine, and we're this destination town that is not lacking in charm, and I feel like the amount of energy that is being put into trying to appease some merchants, frankly, a handful of merchants that wish there were plants and trees there, is disproportionate to the actual benefit and the significance to the broader scheme of the economy in our historic downtown. And if people are citing that as a reason that their business will or will not thrive, it is a misdirection it's just a misdirection. It's a nice to have. Is it cute? It's totally cute. If you love it, do it. I don't feel like we have any reason, there's no justification to put this amount of resource, of time and money into this. And I'm getting really tired of it, you know? It is a risk that people won't do it, Tom. Whose responsibility is that actually, you know?
Sure.
You know, whose responsibility is it that we have made the opportunity for people to do parklets, that we've made the opportunity for, you know, merchants to have sidewalk dining, and if people don't make good on it, you know, and they just want to blame the city, it's just, I don't know. It makes me want to shake my head a little.
I'm gonna throw a proposal out, or a motion. I motion to use the funds that would go to the planter to reimburse merchants, to invest in plants and planters of their choosing, prohibiting plastic, composite, and other synthetic materials, with a preference on historically appropriate materials such as wood, metal, and terracotta. I don't know if terracotta is.
Concrete,
Concrete.
probably.
Okay.
It's probably more historical.
Second part of the motion is that each store shall receive equal credits. If one store chooses not to use them, they can give their credits to another store. And owners shall have to present receipt and approval at the staff level to receive reimbursement. And owners will be responsible for watering their own plants.
I'm okay that with a starting point, but you used the word planter boxes
Uh-oh.
in the beginning.
Okay.
And so if you're putting them back on the street,
Let's say planters. I'll just say
Can you come
planters.
I
up with
heard
a
plants and
word?
planters.
Come up with a word that we can all use.
Containers.
Because I think, yeah, let's say containers.
Okay. Plant
Can we
containers.
work with that word?
plant containers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
2 hours later.
Yeah. I'll stop there. If anyone wants to amend that in a way that makes it,
I like the word vessel better. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Container is great.
do I hear a second?
I would amend it to include presentability,
Okay.
not dead. Dead plants must be removed.
Could it be subject to also, your concern about design and being appropriate? Could it be subject to maybe even a free planning commission review for appropriate materials or something? Like a sign would be, like a
We would have
paint
to
job would
do
be, like,
design
sounds-
guidelines, it would have to
That
be
sounds like a
design
real
guidelines.
headache.
Yeah.
Hold that thought, that
Because then
motion.
we're gonna have people coming and get excited about it, and it's just gonna be arduous, and it's gonna come back 2 or 3 meetings, and it's.
We don't want to be talking
gonna
about
be too
plants ever
hard.
again.
so design design guidelines that would give examples or specific ones that they could buy. Is that what you're thinking?
And to remain at the store, I think, like this is, if it's a city reimbursed, it doesn't, I mean, I don't know how we
Yeah,
would enforce it,
So that's a
but
difference, right? Like
Yeah.
city-owned and city-provided, or city programmed where we give them.
you know what, my feeling on this is this is something that we're doing for the benefit of our town. We don't need to be monitoring and controlling and handcuffing plants to stores. So if this like makes everyone happy and it beautifies things, that's what I want to see.
The other thing that comes to my mind is that we were looking at, custom-built, nice metal, steel, wood that were upwards of $700 to $1,000 to build. I can't really imagine doing that just for one store.
Right.
So then,
But if there was a budget, say, of like a total of, I don't know, $5,000 for something like that, I'm throwing this out there, then what that leaves like maybe around $500 per store, that's really a lot, potentially, or at least like you can buy a few very nice plants that you really love and want to see.
Oh, no.
Does that mean it's over?
My comment on that.
Getting there.
I'm just hoping to get a second.
My comment on that is, or observation is
Hold
that
that motion.
I think it's difficult to pull out city-owned, is this city-owned, city money just for Commercial Street? Or is this for the whole,
yeah, it's in.
what about the
it's in
merchants
budget.
on?
This Commercial Street Softscape project, so it includes the benches
Okay,
and the, not planter boxes, but planters.
I wonder what the people on Broad Street are gonna be saying. How come you're spending money
Well, it's
over
different.
there?
I mean, the Commercial Street project is the Commercial Street project.
As a pilot project, as a model for the rest of the city.
Potentially.
Yeah. First things first.
So, brand guidelines, you would say there'd need to be, is that what you said? What'd you call them? Design guidelines?
Right.
Thanks,
Either,
I'm in branding, I'm doing marketing.
either we choose like some products and we get one that's like a rectangle that's maybe like more like a flower box, like what Peter's talking about.
Say box.
Yeah.
Sorry. And we have some like, internet choices or something.
Yeah, the challenge I see is referencing some of the pictures that were provided by our community members. My assumption is that these vessels, what do we call them? Containers.
Containers.
These containers are generally up against the buildings, right? And so the size and what will actually fit if you've got, a big post for a balcony, if you've got your front windows, it is so variable that again, I don't know that I feel like the city can actually design that. So in part, I sort of agree with you, Tom, but rather, I'm thinking about, here's where I would love to believe in my merchant friends, is they're responsible for making beautiful stores, beautiful windows, beautiful storefronts. As tightly as possible, can we create guidelines for materials, dimensions, how much it sticks out, how far it can encroach or not, and then let them shop, you know?
Yes, like guidelines for placement, so.
Guidelines for.
Like on the north side of Commercial Street, where lots of places have columns, only inboard the columns, not outboard the columns.
Right.
So I would amend what my motion said to also include that totality of planter,
Like square footage.
square footage of planters shall not impede with
Footprint.
ADA access. Thanks for that.
Multiple planters or just one?
Totality. Total square footage of planters. So none of them can be so large or voluminous that it gets in the way of.
Well, I think they should all be against the building. I mean, I don't think they
Yes.
should be out on the curb, right? They should-
Yes, that was the sense of the city council as well.
Okay, yeah, so
On the
next
curb.
amendment, planters shall be against the wall.
Close to the building?
Now, excuse me, are you using the word planters in the same?
Containers.
Containers.
Planters and
Containers,
containers
okay.
are the same word in this case.
Not
yes.
the planter boxes that we talked about previously.
I promise,
These are
I will
now-
never let them
won't
come near
revert
you,
to
Peter.
Because I still think it's open season for them because Lisa doesn't think we voted
What a
against them.
jab.
I
Oh,
won't
no,
make it personal.
your notes. I don't,
At least
you
we're
just
laughing.
read,
It may have been discussed, but I'm not certain that it was an actual motion.
that's what,
You guys will just have to go back to the videos and sort it out afterwards when the rest of us go
And we
home.
do that when we do the minutes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So
Yeah.
I trust that the minutes are accurate for the motions that were made.
Okay. All right, any other considerations and amendments that we want to throw in here? Do we need to hammer out the guidelines more at another time?
I think the guidelines and maybe maintenance can be a separate motion.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think the guidelines and maintenance need to be a separate motion. I mean, we're throwing out some of the ideas, but
Yeah.
it's a list that needs to really be considered, because it's not just the size of the vessel, but what about how the plant grows out? It can't be growing out into the sidewalk either, where people are hitting their head, or you know. So there definitely has to be. What's that?
Would you, can you read back Amy's motion?
I don't have the entire thing because there were
Yeah.
places where I
She's
lost it a
going
little
to,
bit.
she's going to go back to the audio.
I will, I'll do it in a minute, but one thing that I just want to sort of clear up and talk about a little bit more is what do these potentially provided by the city planters look like? And what are they? What materials are they? Where do they come from? Because if,
That's another.
That- so
another
that's-
motion.
No, that was, sorry, that
I
was
just want
part
to
of the
make sure that
motion.
we're being realistic before we have a motion. you know.
The motion is to allow merchants to purchase their own plant containers within a set of designated guidelines that we will agree on at another point in terms of like what the material can be, but that it's up to them to choose what they want it to look like. They can go to B&C, they can go to Hills Flat, they can go to Marketplace, they can do whatever and buy
They
it
all
there
have
and then.
wholesale licenses, so they can buy them wholesale.
And
They have resale
provide,
licenses.
ultimately, what matters to the city is that the planter, or the container is within aesthetic guidelines, that there is a receipt for it, that it's not impeding ADA compliance, and that it is tended to, and that we don't have dead plants hanging out on the sidewalk.
Got it.
What if it's mirrors that are smoked mirrors or chrome
I love it.
or
like,
Green velvet.
it's fine, it's non-permanent, it's green velvet, huh?
I'm just
Show
picking
me,
things.
show me this planter, Tom.
No, it's not all the same planter. These are different ones I've described.
Show me this green velvet planter. I think a green velvet planter would actually be very historically
Flowers.
appropriate. It would be like a lampshade from the Old National. This is, I think that we're clutching our pearls so hard about what these potential planters could look like, and probably they're just gonna be filled with beautiful plants.
It matters to me, though. I'm
Yeah.
clutching my pearls.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to see somebody buy like, a Disney's Dumbo, planter with, you know what I mean? Like, it just, I do tend to prefer, while eclectic, I tend to prefer things that reflect days gone by. And I think that the people who are putting additional money into our economy are, they like feeling that immersion. And I think it's part of what creates, a destination. So maybe how I would try to revise what we're trying to do here is, can the motion start with saying something like, in lieu of the proposed planters, the proposed planters and
Presented.
locations, in lieu of the presented or proposed? Or what?
I think presented planter boxes is
And
the villain.
locations.
You're being comic here.
Yeah,
Because I don't think we need to do in lieu of anything. I think we're proposing a path forward that can be independent of anything that's been proposed before. Isn't that the case?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a motion about it before.
okay, now I'm really lost. Before when?
Allow the planning commission and staff to work on guidelines for sidewalk encroachment for planters.
Okay, but there wasn't a motion saying, if I'm following you, there was not a motion saying we don't want the proposed city-owned planters. So
I don't
that's
think
why
there
I'm
was.
saying in lieu of, for
Okay,
absolute
all right,
clarity.
okay.
In lieu of the proposed city-owned planters, the planning commission suggests,
Recommends
thank you, better word, recommends
program 2.
a program for merchants to be reimbursed for the purchase of containers which adhere to a yet-to-be-determined set of design guidelines and locations.
Could I add?
Something like that.
Could I add something, or?
Please. Yes.
Another
Go.
idea? And that that they will be compatible and reflective of the historic nature of.
Compatible
Nevada.
with mother lode architecture.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You
well, I was
got it.
assuming that would be in the yet-to-be-defined design guidelines, but yeah, yes.
What is a mother lode planter look like?
Well, it's not plastic.
Compatible, and it's been pointed out, there's a difference between compatibility. It's been pointed out, there's a difference between compatibility and consistency.
Okay, just as long as we eventually get there. If I were a merchant, I'd be ripping my hair out.
We're about ripping our hairs out.
I know, like.
What would you
I'd
be
be
ripping
bald.
your
Get
hair out
better.
about, though?
Because this is something that comes up all the time is what is, sorry, Lori. What is mother lode? Because it's not, like, there is a set of guidelines, but then. I know it's in the ordinance and there are still questions. I am getting us caught up.
Well,
I
and,
just
in
wanna-
some way, I think that the grayness of motherlode architecture should be actually embraced as like, oh, there's latitude, because it's an amalgam of things that were happening
Yeah.
in that time. It's
Again,
not-
compatibility versus consistency.
Okay, I take it all back. Let's keep going forward. We'll keep going forward.
Reflective.
Is the language that's established in our structure is compatibility, consistency. It's two different things.
Okay.
but it refers to mother lode architecture, which refers to the context of Commercial Street. And it gives a lot of latitude, in my opinion, in many people's opinion.
Would you read that back then, Lisa, please?
Yes, what I got was, in lieu of the previously proposed planter boxes and locations, the Planning Commission recommends a program for merchants to be reimbursed for the purchase of containers for a yet-to-be-determined design guidelines, and that they will be compatible with mother lode architecture.
And to be clear, would the design guidelines spell out appropriate locations, or does that need to be specified in this motion?
That would be part of their encroachment permit. We
Okay.
would review the location.
Would you read that again, please? What you just said?
In lieu of the previously proposed planter boxes and locations, the Planning Commission recommends a program for merchants to be reimbursed for the purchase of containers for a yet-to-be-determined design guidelines, and that they will be compatible with mother lode architecture.
So we get containers. Okay. So window boxes would be a separate issue.
That's a container.
No, window boxes
Anything that
You're gonna
contains
call
soil
that-
in a plant.
It's a container.
Yeah. Unless you have a different word, Peter, because I think
No,
we're
I'm
we're
trying to-
somehow sharing a brain on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a cow skull is a container in this case, and perhaps appropriate.
Consistent with.
Consistent with my cowboy hat?
compatible with
Sure,
mother
yeah.
Do
lode.
you like,
Okay.
what do you like? Is there a word that you think is more
No,
accurate?
I think this is good. But we've also talked about J.J. Jackson's and putting they've been putting out what? Does each one of them have plants in them?
J.J. Jackson?
Yeah.
She's got they're almost like a black little wire, wrought iron wire
Yeah, I
basket.
just saw- yeah.
And then with the,
Say it's terracotta?
So
No,
at
it's
one-
that,
They're wire, they're wire with
filled with that little
around it.
moss.
Yeah.
So
right,
at
right.
one time, didn't they just have some pots out there in
I
front
don't
of their?
remember that.
I don't,
So, okay, so we're limiting the addition to those storefronts of live plants. We're talking about plants.
Versus,
Plastic plants.
oh yeah, only
Plants.
real natural plants,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so that would be within the design guidelines.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
I think the design guidelines would spell out the material choices for the vessel, the container, the condition it must be kept in, who's responsible for keeping it in that condition, as well as what can be put in it.
And location in relation
And the
to
location.
to the building.
Yeah, overall footprint, I suppose, and also
Hmm.
really kind of like airspace. You know, there might need to be a consideration for the airspace it's occupying.
Though we're not there yet,
Right.
I wouldn't see why limit that, except
In,
as
maybe
it
in
relates
how
to,
wide it goes, yeah,
As it relates to ADA path of travel.
yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
I think that if Teresa wants to put in some kind of tree in a planter that is within
You mean a container?
a container, that's within, ADA compliance that goes up, that's great. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the branching structure of certain things, that if it's
Not hitting
impeding
people in the
people
face.
walking by on the sidewalk is all. That just has to be,
Well, we have a secondable motion, I think.
I'll second.
Wait, you first did it, or did?
I think,
Okay.
I guess mine got scratched and Wendy
Great start.
revitalized
Great
it.
start.
yeah,
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
So roll call.
Ready? Commissioner Ermschar?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Zant?
Yes.
Vice Chair Cobden?
Yes.
Chair Nye?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion carries.
Can we all be friends still? It's so uncomfortable.
Oh, heck, yeah.
There'll be no fighting at the planning commission?
Planting commission?
The
Oh,
planning.
my
Oh,
goodness.
geez. No, thank you.
So shall we begin a discussion about what design guidelines should contain?
Sure.
Do we have to?
Right?
I mean, I'm happy to get this thing.
Yeah, let's just
Put it to bed.
let's talk about
You guys are on a roll.
what we don't want are
Can I
Okay.
In that category, though, I wonder, can we decide what categories of things need to be defined? Like we kind of just did, like, what vessels, what location, and then like take each one of those little things and say, you said what we don't want, so do's and don'ts of like each of those categories?
Okay, so motion that the vessels, should we start with what the
Containers.
vessels? Containers?
You have to refer to as containers.
I like vessels, it's kind of catching, isn't it?
Let's just talk about design guidelines and then come up with a motion. How about that?
Yes.
What we don't
Think
want,
about the whole thing.
we don't want plastics. We don't want composites. Although I see nothing wrong with like a terrazzo. Does terrazzo or concrete form a composite?
Terrazzo's like ancient Italy.
Yeah, no, I think that would be beautiful. So I'm concerned about the word composite. No plastics of any kind. I think we can leave it there.
Terracotta?
Well, if we're talking about the actual containers right now, right?
Materials.
My opinion is this is where we utilize the phrase is, would you say complementary?
Enter boxes?
No, stop it.
Sorry.
No, you said about mother load architecture. You said
Compatible.
compatible, is that the word?
Yeah.
So I think the headline is.
That covers it.
The headline is containers should be compatible with, must be compatible with the mother load architecture style, whatever. And then we can define a little further, plastic containers may not use plastic.
In materials available in the
There you
mother
go.
load period.
Yeah, such
And
as,
we'd have to give examples,
yeah,
concrete, metal,
wood,
wood, ceramic.
that's all I can think of.
Yeah, me too.
Stone,
Stone.
yeah, like a marble planter.
Stone or
Somebody wanted to buy
organic
marble.
materials.
Well, you're talking natural materials. You could use natural materials, and that eliminates plastic and, does it? Natural materials?
I think so.
I think finishes matter too, right? So if we say metal, Tom, you brought up the idea, well, what if it's chrome? That's metal, right? Or sort of. So natural materials and finishes. Is that,
Not much natural about finishes, though. Powder coated, painted, metal,
Shellacked.
Benches are painted.
powder coated.
Powder coated, yeah.
I don't think we're going to get a chrome. Somebody bring a wheel or something, or
And if we do,
well, yeah, I mean, I suppose, yeah, we won't die. And also, I suppose somebody could say, hey, that is not compatible with mother load architecture.
but we wouldn't want to say that after the purchase has been made.
Yeah.
And reimbursed by the city.
Or they wouldn't get reimbursed.
Well,
Maybe they-
that sucks.
Well, they can return it.
If we're reimbursing, then
Yeah,
does the
then-
request come
they need to come before. They need to
before
apply.
they buy it and to see if it's compatible?
Yeah.
It's like what we do with a front porch, right? We look at the design before it's built.
They're not going to come to
Yeah.
planning commission, though. We're not going to be approving.
right.
Yeah,
plans.
Could-
staff level, look at the encroachment.
This is a staff, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that works because we
So
don't
then,
have.
if it's ministerially approved, how much clarity do you need? Because ultimately, you're the
Right.
one looking at it. So how much clarity do you need to feel confident that you can,
So here's my
uphold the
concern,
vision.
which I've sort of voiced, is
Uh-huh.
Home Depot planter made out of wood that should be, have legs to where it doesn't sit like this, but somebody wants to do one and it turns out on the sidewalk looking bad. Is there something that's telling us or telling me that I shouldn't approve that
That
wood-
it doesn't look right.
That wood planter?
I'll say that on Commercial Street, every container will not be standing plumb unless the shop owner chooses to make it plumb.
Yeah.
It
They
won't.
should want to do that.
But they don't, people don't, should do.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be some difference of vision there. I think as
Yeah.
long as it's the correct material, if they want to go to Home Depot and get a wooden planter box, oops, or a wooden plant container,
A window box?
a window box, fine, it's okay, like, it's wood, they aren't all going to look the way that we would choose them to be, but that's,
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree that some ad hocness, some less than perfect craftsmanship is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And
People
it
they're
doesn't
gonna
bother
buy it.
everybody.
That's
It bothers
okay.
the heck out of me, but
Bothers
like,
me.
I'm not the president
But-
of the universe.
But
For me, if
don't-
you're talking about the Home Depot planter boxes that have like the little metal band around them,
Or
is that,
even like some of the ones that I showed in December,
Uh-huh.
where everyone was like, that's a no, that's a no, that's a no. And then we had like two that were like, actually, those are nice. But the rest of them are very generic looking, you know, and
well, I
and
think
those
that
are what's widely available for people to buy.
one of the big concerns there, I think, which may be an important distinction, is that we didn't want to see those
a billion
in
of them.
uniform.
Yeah.
And giant. These are not going to be as big, for sure. They're not going to be as
We're
big.
making the assumption there, but I agree, probably not. Yeah, Peter.
Should our gateway be Lisa Planner, that the storefront, the store has to present a plan like everything else we goes through? And I don't, sometimes it would come to us, sometimes it would be your sign off. But you've got the criteria, it's got to be compatible, can't be oversized, can't be plastic, you know, that sort of thing. And that's a judgment, but you've got guidelines for your judgment. Would you be comfortable with that? And then you would also, if it exceeded what was, you thought was intended, or exceeded size or something like that, then you bring it to the planning commission like you do some other, you know, sometimes we look at paint, sometimes we don't. Sometimes you take care of it. So would you be comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
And I
so
assume
she
that-
becomes the arbitrator of these words.
Well, I understand that, and, you know, I feel like part of our work is to put her in a position of clarity and therefore authority, that she's going to have people presenting things that she can't justify why she doesn't think it's appropriate. And so, you know, that's where we need to have her back to say, hey, here, this is really clear, so that she's not having to be such an interpreter.
And a lot of
We
times.
I think we just covered that, in that if it falls outside the clear intention, our clear intention for the look on Commercial Street, then she brings it here.
Oh, so I didn't say that. I wasn't clear enough. What I'm thinking of is understanding our intention here at the table is different than having our intention represented in a reference document for an applicant to know ahead of time, so that it's, you know, they're already probably presenting something more on point to Lisa, and if not, it's easier for her to cite, right here, see this part, you're not doing this part, or you missed this thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but there's also, in planning, there's the real hard definition, and then there's the judgment. And she's going to be dealing with both of them. We deal with them, right?
Right, to refine your question, I'd ask Lisa.
Yeah.
There is some subjectivity it's not exactly a checkbox code-based thing, because there are too many, there would be too many checkboxes.
Yeah.
Does this meet this? So would you be comfortable in making subjective decisions about what fits in the intent of the commission? Would you
Yeah.
be comfortable in doing that?
And really, what people are probably going to ask is, what can I do? Which one can I do? Do you have any that you can just direct me to so I can buy that one?
So you can give examples.
Yeah, like a link to one that they could actually buy.
So from an administrative standpoint, does it sound like a manageable mission for you?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Well, how many
Yeah.
stores are on Commercial Street?
Not very many.
Not very many, yeah. That's the right answer.
Yeah. I know Teresa will apply.
Yeah.
So.
Once she's got out there,
The
which
one she's got.
she ought to get a medal for
I
having
say
them
we
in.
grandfather her in.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, when you were asking us, like, should you approve the Home Depot something or other, that's where I had the impression that maybe you didn't feel clear or confident, you know, which I understand. It's
I'm just
not.
throwing that out there so that if there's some other, guideline that you want to include to sort
Right.
of send people in the right direction, then that should be, thought through.
Yeah, I mean, containers that feel like complementary to the aesthetic are urns, that's what Melissa has. She has like little urns, planter boxes.
Window boxes? you
Window
mean?
boxes,
Yeah,
thank you, sorry. Oh, jeez. Even the hanging baskets, that was talked about at our last meeting. It hasn't come up today.
And I'll say that those have been approved, and there's
Yeah.
enthusiasm for them.
Yeah.
And that's a chamber initiative.
Right.
The hanging baskets
Yeah.
on the light poles.
I don't think it's that hard, because there's this issue is, I don't know how to define it, but I know whether it fits or not. Somebody will be bringing, they'll bring a variety of things to you, and some of them will be absolutely clear, and some of them will end up here in front of the planning commission. Then we make the decision.
Hopefully not.
That's if Lisa, as the gatekeeper, says, no, I really think that's not in the spirit of what we're directed to do, and the applicant says, no, I insist, that's when it would come to us. It'd be sort of an appeal, sort of, where it would come to the planning commission for final say. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, it's the same with like architectural review
It
on,
is, we do that often, right?
Lisa, let's say you got recruited away to Grass Valley.
Heavens forbid.
How clear would it be how much clarity should there be for somebody new to the role with a new planning commission, with the, what are the breadcrumbs that need to be left?
yeah. I mean, that's obviously what I'll think about when I work on a draft for you guys. Yeah. So similar to the design guidelines for outdoor dining, which I think people find to be readable and easy pictures, and they circle one and say, I'm going to do this chair style. I think it's straightforward.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't talked about size. We haven't talked about constraints of like scale, materials. So far I've got concrete, metal, wood, ceramic, stone, and natural materials, and other natural materials.
I think other,
Can't
yeah.
think of any, yeah.
I'm, cow skull.
What'd you
What?
say?
Cow skull.
Oh, yeah, cow skull, natural
Bone?
material.
Yeah, bone. I mean, I don't think we need to specify, but
Felted wool?
felted wool, cowboy hat.
So I'm thinking we've gotten pretty far along, and we're now tasking Lisa with coming up, developing a regulation, or whatever you want, a guideline,
A draft set of
a draft set of things
guidelines,
that'll
Lisa?
come back to us, and then we get to do this all over again.
Yeah, I do feel like you were asking for more information, though.
No, I think I
You're
got
good?
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I heard
And
you
we
say,
can talk about it
we
some
didn't talk
more.
about blank. Did you want some input?
No.
Size?
not-
Size limitations?
If you wanted to talk about that now, yeah.
I would like to bring up size limitations. What I would like to see is a wide variety of options for people. The only holdback to me is that they ensure that there is ADA accessibility in front of their store, and that plant containers are oriented against the wall of the building, and that vegetation does not hit the faces of walkers or
Yeah.
pedestrians.
Yeah.
Well, that's easy to do.
I
I mean,
would-
that.
Agreed.
there's a
It is easy,
There's a
but-
requirement that these features be attached to or next to the building.
Yeah,
And if.
but we just want to clarify, that's
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Just giving
And-
her a
and-
list.
And if she
Yep.
gets something that comes 3 feet in and it cuts down to the 48 inches, the ADA, then you've got to.
No on that
you-
checkbox.
you-
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a no.
I wonder if it would be helpful also to consider, like, it's also a vague term, but kind of like mother lode architecture, right? But in scale with the building, in scale with the,
No.
That's
I
pretty
think that's
subjective.
way too subjective, yeah. Like, I like where you're going with that, except that,
I think it wouldn't be unfair to
well, what
lay
if
out
somebody
next-
had
sorry
like
to-
20 little miniature pots? What if somebody's like, I'm just going to put out 20 little miniature pots? You like it?
Yeah.
I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
mind. That's up to them.
It'd be
Probably they
funny.
won't. I think, yeah, it could be sweet. I don't
I
know.
think somebody would do that, for sure.
Great.
As long as they're not
I
plastic
hope
with
so.
plastic flowers, I guess.
Yeah, maybe a bunch of little succulents or something. If I were them, I'd be worried about people running off with them.
I'd like to throw in for descriptive language for materials, durable.
Good one.
Why do you laugh?
Because, sorry, you just hit a nerve. It's not you. It's a scene from Schitt's Creek, a TV show.
Oh,
Maybe
would you
Miriam will
like to
get the
tell the
joke.
rest of the class about this episode? I'm kidding.
would
Does anyone
love to
object to the
after.
addition of the word material?
I think durable is a great word, yeah.
No problem.
Which would denote a certain level of quality.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not going to be rotting on
I
the street.
think we're done.
So just a reminder, this will go to the council.
It's coming back to us, right?
If the council directs us to go ahead with this new idea of a program, then.
Okay, go. So you're going to
So
go,
you're making a recommendation to the council. and
that
then
you
the-
develop guidelines
Yes.
for decorations on Commercial Street.
Yes. And then
I thought they sent you back to us specifically because of that. So you have to go back and ask them to do, if you can do the guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, that needs to come from council. This is still,
Direct city
this is
staff.
still a recommendation to council. Whether it's for, city-provided planters on Commercial Street or a program.
Okay. But I'm thinking, if we go sideways and you bring it to us and we refine it even further, then it goes to the council.
No, I think the idea goes to the council in its current format for review, and then they're going to say, yeah, we agree with the planning commission's recommendation, let's come up with that program.
Okay,
and
so you're talking about
reimburse
the
people.
program.
Or they're going to say, you know what, that sounds great, but, we want some planters out there this summer, and the program might take a little while, so,
Well, that's it.
and they might come up with some other hybrid approach.
Yeah. I'm thinking that you would be doing a draft that would come to us, and then we would make the recommendation to the council. I think they sent it back to us.
I would like to
Yes,
see it
this is your
happen as quickly as,
recommendation.
yeah, this is,
But we have to see what the recommendation looks like in real language.
My
As
understanding.
far as design guidelines?
Yeah. I
Well, the
think,
direction will be, yes, Lisa, go work with the
Right.
planning commission on design guidelines and get a program in place.
Didn't
My-
we just, wait.
Okay.
I'm really confused.
All right, may I interject? My understanding would be that we don't direct city staff to draft language. We make a recommendation of this whole program, and then the city council guess that sounds like a good idea and direct city staff to do draft language that we edit or approve as written. And then the city council approves the whole program. Because
Correct.
we've
It's
introduced
policy,
a new like regulatory process into it, which, I mean, I agree with Lisa that it would need to come from the council for her to be directed to do this work, the draft work.
So we're recommending to the council that Lisa develop a program for decorations on Commercial Street.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
this
a
is
reimbursement program.
Yeah, so
And a
this
reimbursement.
is a new program that I think
Based on limited
Yeah.
funding.
But we don't know what the program is because we haven't seen the language.
Well, the only thing we're lacking is design guidelines and the actual, like, enactment of the reimbursement scheme and all that, how that works mechanically,
Oh,
which is definitely a thing that has to, meet the approval of the city
Yeah.
council, because they direct the budget.
I'm just thinking,
The actionability,
no, I'm just thinking that we've had this discussion in detail. We should be reviewing the language that we're asking them to approve.
Well,
And
can
you're
Lisa-
asking, you're
Well, that's
going to ask them for permission to do that.
That's why in part I was trying to get a lot of bullet points to give a little bit more of a picture of what we're suggesting. So I don't know how much of that will show up in your staff report in terms of saying, this is the shape of what those design guidelines would look like. This is the shape of how the reimbursement or purchase, would look. And I understand what you're saying about the process is, we don't say, Lisa, now go put energy writing this thing. We don't do that. City council does, right? And so your staff report, I hope, will have enough representation of the shape of the thing. That's your concern, that
Yes.
it's not just some vague idea that they're like, what are we, I don't know how to vote on this, right?
it was a vague idea before, and now it's far more concrete and actionable. And
And I think we should prepare things that are ready to go. And then it goes to
So is there
city
anything
council.
you want to add to that will be in the staff report at city council so that it feels pretty clear to council, other than it's not a finalized design guideline?
We asked her to do design.
Yeah, but she can't write that before city council says, yep, go ahead and write it. So she can't do that,
Okay.
right? That's what I'm hearing?
that seems clear to me, to be for the
Okay.
correct process.
So
I'm
you're
sure.
not bringing them specifics, you're bringing them just the question for authorizing you to develop it? Okay,
With
I
a
guess
summary
so.
of this discussion.
But a nice staff report, kind of like, you've done like really beautiful, well-detailed staff reports for the previously proposed design. And so now essentially, I think it should represent a different direction, but with that type of, explanation, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, the motion and the program is similar to your motion from your last meeting, which was allow the planning commission and staff to work on guidelines for sidewalk encroachment for planters. So,
For planters?
yes, containers, planters.
Plant containers
Containers.
Like a terracotta pot.
So
or a window box.
we're still there,
And
but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
more
And the window
refined.
boxes. Okay.
Yeah, so now it's more refined, and I'll give them the motion that Wendy made, and the basics of the design guidelines of what was discussed.
Yep, and we're not dictating a uniform look and size.
Right.
Okay,
Absolutely not.
okay, just, I want
Yeah,
that on
no,
the record.
yes, yeah.
I put it in the record. Okay. And it's still, actually, it just stopped snowing. We done?
Look at that, it's not even 3:30 yet.
Wow.
Quick, bang that gavel.
Any other business?
Nobody can
Or
say
shall
we
we
didn't spend
adjourn?
enough
Our
time on it.
next regular meeting is April 18th.